Thank you very much for the kind presentation. And thank you, Mr. President and the government of Greenland, and also the organizers for setting this up, giving me a reason to go to Nuuk. We also have an office here in Nuuk, so I'm always happy to come here. This being a forum will make me focus on sharing some of my experiences with you. I have been working for Ramboll for 4 years as a circumpolar Arctic business developer, project developer, and society developer. And I will also share with you some of my opinions on how to use financing tools to get the Arctic in progress, the Arctic development in progress. I am a native Arctic citizen. I was born in a small town in the northern part of Norway at 70 degrees north. And during all my childhood and youth, I learned that it was troublesome to live in a small town. When I grew up, all those small towns in the northern part of Norway, they were very much like Nuuk. They were sort of pioneer societies. You needed a school, you needed a butcher, you needed a hospital because you were so isolated. The communications was completely different. My hometown has now lost the hospital and other functions, but they have gained what you have learned about today. They have gained a living standard similar to the rest of Western Europe. So you give and you take. I am bold enough to have some suggestions for you where to invest. And during these 2 very interesting days in Nuuk, I have picked 2 industries. There are several others, but these 2 industries are common for the complete Arctic and can give opportunities for every Arctic society. The first industry both of you gentlemen should investigate is the tourism industry, including infrastructure for transport of tourists. We have heard earlier today that perhaps we should look on the Arctic as one Arctic tourism region. I don't know if that's possible, but of course, interconnection in the region will perhaps make the Arctic tourism region to one region. Today, I think we have to admit that there is competition when attracting tourists to the Arctic. I have a grand idea since I live in Tromsø, and I've spoken to President Johnsen about this previously this year. My grand idea is to connect Tromsø with Reykjavik with an airline. And then you truly can start to investigate and develop a single Arctic tourist industry. And in my view, this will make the tourist communities stronger together. And in fact, in Arctic Scandinavia, for the first time in history, the tourist industry of Arctic Norway, Arctic Sweden, and Arctic Finland, they are now cooperating on establishing Arctic Scandinavia as a single destination for tourists. What kind of investment should you then pick? Of course, the extension of Nuuk Airport, it goes without saying, it will be very valuable for the tourism industry here in Greenland, but also in Iceland. And you should also investigate the extension of the airport in Tromsø that possible also can gain both tourism in Iceland, perhaps in Greenland in the future, and of course in northern part of Norway. In addition, you should investigate to invest in other infrastructure that make a destination more a reason to go. And since we are here in Nuuk, I would like to show you the Inuk Towers. It's an idea. It's a visionary idea of a project made by Liz Stender, a Greenlandic designer. This is not developed, of course, and you will meet many projects that are not still developed, but that are visionary. Such projects are not only a reason to go for tourists, but it can also increase the attraction factor or the X factor of the city of Nuuk. Why do we need such an X factor? Yes, we need it because we also would like to attract human capital to Nuuk and Reykjavik and Tromsø. People to settle down and to join forces in developing the societies. This is not developed, but in Nuuk we have another grand project that is developed. They only are looking for financing, and that's for you. It is the National Gallery of Art in Greenland. There has been an international architect competition, and it is, as I have learned, nearly ready to be built if you have the financing. And another thing I learned about Nuuk today is that you have a Norwegian sledge here. You have the sledge that Nansen used when they crossed the Greenland ice for the first time. Why don't you exhibit it here or here in the future? So, tourism through... Oh, great. How did you fix that? It was not prepared at all. Another industry that is pan-Arctic and also developing to be more and more pan-Arctic is the shipping industry. And today we had this great news. I don't think you all know the impact of the news today, the cooperation on shipping. It will be a game changer for Greenland for sure. The shipping industry will grow, it is growing. For you, you can then invest in vessels, of course, for shipping, and in ports. And we can see that the investment in the expansion of the port of Nuuk is typically a trigger investment. Without this extension, this agreement has probably not been done between the two partners. We have other port projects all over the Arctic in different development phases. So where should you pick your port projects to finance? Of course, many of these projects that also is on the inventory list of Guggenheim, they are competing projects. Only in Kirkenes, a border city between Norway and Russia, in Norway, we have 3 or 4 competing port projects. All of them heading to become the next transit port for the Northern Sea route. So you have to choose between them. And then, of course, you have to do some assessments, as I've learned that you do. You have to assess the permitting risk. And the different Arctic countries and the different Arctic municipalities have different kinds of risks when giving permits to development projects. you should also assess and evaluate and make a risk assessment then of the authorities, the decision-making processes. Because when you meet authorities or municipalities or mayors all over the Arctic region, they show you perhaps the smiley face of the project. And perhaps they oversell it. And we have also learned, and this is true, many small Arctic societies, they do not have sufficient authority capacity to handle big projects. And of course, you should do other assessments, as you always do, general risk assessments. As a Norwegian, I'm sorry to say that we have a disadvantage in Arctic Norway, and the 100% Arctic countries, they have an advantage when it comes to project development and risk assessment, those risks that I just talked about. So you can, for instance, compare the two projects, Finnafjörður in Iceland with Kirkenes in Norway. Both are heading to become the next port for transit when the Arctic Ocean opens. In Iceland, and this is my opinion, I'm not a researcher, this is my opinion, it is an easier process. It's a more predictable process to get all the permits and regulatory framework agreements that you need than in the northern part of Norway, unfortunately. So, Mr. Grimson and others from Iceland, it's sometimes good to be smaller than Norway. And then you should assess or investigate, are these two projects competing or not? Today we have heard both from Trudy Shipping, looking to Scandinavia and Russia, and you have heard from Eimskip, looking to Scandinavia, Greenland and America. Perhaps they aren't competing anyway. It's up to you to assess. I think also when you are looking for investment projects, to make sure that you secure the governmental support, you should focus on so-called trigger investments. Investments that will make other investments come. We have already talked about the port of Nuuk. In Tromsø, my hometown, the pro-rector from Tromsø is here. They established a university 50 years ago. And without this decision and this investment, there would have been no Arctic development force in northern part of Norway. And finally, you should discuss if you should contribute in such a type of trigger investment. Thank you.